I just wanted to give you some perspective about this panel, because this panel is all about 50 years of the sports business from a non-Super Bowl, non-Dolphin perspective. And here's what we've got. On October 2nd of 1970, the University of Miami beat Maryland 18-11. You won't remember that because it was on the way to a last season of Charlie Tate in a 3-8 season. Suffice to say, University of Miami's gotten a little better since then, as this facility attests. The Doral Eastern Open in 1970, Mike Hill shot a 279, a four-stroke victory over Jim Colbert. It became Doral Eastern Open, the Ryder synonymous with golf in South Florida and the world, and Joe Steranka knows it, and he'll talk about that. The Minnesota Muskies, anybody remember them? No, of course not, I'm old. Minnesota Muskies moved to Miami and became the ABA Miami Floridians. And owner Ned Doyle, in a deal that you probably can't do today, he said, I'm firing the team and keeping the coach. Whereupon, as soon as he moved the team to the Miami Beach Convention Center, he released all the players. Well, then he was told he had to re-sign a few, and the team obviously did not make the playoffs. Bob Bass was the coach, 37-47. They played in Jacksonville, West Palm Beach, Tampa, Miami Beach Convention Center, before the University of Miami brought the program back years after Rick Barry. So 70 was 50 years into a whole bunch of stuff. This panel represents sports diversity basically at its best. Lee Kaplan, the director of UHealth Sports Medicine, but more than that, he is the Petra and Stephen Levine Endowed Chair in Sports Medicine, the medical director and head team physician of the Miami Hurricanes and the Miami Marlins, board-certified orthopedic surgeon, kinesiology and sports sciences, Miami Miller School of Medicine. He's basically the reason we're here with UHealth and this program. Thank you very much, by the way, first of all, for doing this.
Thank you, and my mom for writing that. That was pretty good.
Well, you know, I didn't have to read it all, but somebody had to write it, and so we'll get to everybody else in the panel first. We're going to move on a little bit quickly, but Lee, talk for a minute about the connection between sports, medicine, business, entrepreneurialism, how this place came to be, and where you're going.
Yeah, I think that's a really wonderful question. I think first, you know, with Rodney and Brian Bishop, who worked on your last panel, Brian used to work with the athletics department. I think the one thing is that Miami's a very close, knit community. If you think about the involvement that we had, Blake James did a wonderful job in terms of hosting the 49ers. This place was all 49ers until a few days ago. Everybody that was involved last night. And then we had a wonderful opportunity, which may kind of be a synopsis of what you just brought up. When I came here, I really thought there were so many people on this campus in this town that were interested not only in sports medicine, the elbows I do for the Marlins, or the shoulders or the knees with the Hurricanes, but specifically with how to bring those things and innovation along with it. So we have a wonderful school of physiology, biomedical engineering, kinesiology, and we brought them under one roof in the Sports Medicine Institute to enable us to give that back not only to our student athletes but the community. So we had an opportunity through some things I'm involved with the NFL and health and safety to actually partner with them, with the president of the University of Miami's office, Jeff Durek, our provost, specifically on First and Future. So at the convention center on Friday, we had a startup competition, almost like a Shark Tank, and we led the judging, we led the panel, an all-week process, because what you're saying is important, right? So even on this panel, you have somebody that's coming up with new ACL grafts, you have people that are interested in innovation, probably half this room has a Fitbit. But what does it mean? How do we put it in perspective? How do our strength and conditioning folks here use that information to not only help the student athletes, the professional athletes, but all of us get better and perform at a high level? And I think Miami's building that ecosystem to now launch from the university, from the community, into large-scale and large-sector marketplace.
And if there's any better connection between sports, entrepreneurialism, medicine, and business. I haven't seen it, and obviously the sky is the limit for the University of Miami's athletic program with this facility, the coaches, the people committed to it, and Dr. Kaplan. We have somebody that is kind of an embodiment of sports and medical entrepreneurialism, who's the co-founder of and CEO of Embody, a sports medicine company developing medical devices for tendon and ligament repair. We'll let Jeff Conroy talk a little bit about it. Jeff has been a book contributor, a friend, but has a very interesting approach, but also symbolic of the intersection between sports, entrepreneurialism, and business. So tell us a little bit about the company.
No, thanks, Rick, and pleasure to be here, and great opportunity. And what Dr. Kaplan just said is the reason our company exists, is that when you look at advances in technology and innovation and how things change in our elbows and our ankles and our shoulders, and the intersection of, in my case, naval special warfare and Navy SEALs who tear more tendons and ligaments than almost any other patients, and the fact that we were empaneled by the Department of Defense to come up with better solutions for these gentlemen in particular. And to me, the metaphor is the same reason we're swinging the same golf clubs that the pros play with. We need to have access to the most advanced technologies, and so our company is commercializing collagen-based implants that are load-bearing and fibers that are as strong as steel, made out of biologic material, to basically take plastic and synthetics out of medical practice, and to be able to then combine that with advancements, the things that happen here when you look at the intersection of training and nutrition and physical therapy, blood flow restriction, ways that we can harness our own body's healing to kind of assist with what surgeons have done. We've really been the beneficiary of looking at this whole transition of how technology that the Department of Defense funds for special operations warfighters translates into high-performance athletes and then touches all of our children. Probably everyone in here knows either yourself or someone who's torn an ACL or a rotator cuff or an Achilles. And so, we look at the sports business as really the embodiment of personal improvement. And it's funny, we've had lots of experiences where athletes come to us, and we've heard stories about rehabs being difficult. And like most of us growing up, you learn more through adversity than you do from success. And that turns into a whole cycle in an institution like this. It's about how do you build whole systems that not only keep your athletes healthy, but restore them and return them to the field faster. And so we're doing that in parallel so that we can build products that orthopedic surgeons use to put those athletes back on the field.
So these guys obviously are going to talk and have a conversation, but the more important issue here is the intersection between sports, business, technology, entrepreneurialism, and innovation. And speaking of innovation, Jeremy Balkin, the head of innovation, retail banking, and wealth management of HSBC USA, the leading international expert on ethics in banking, fintech, and strategic engagement. And he is currently the head of innovation for HSBC's business based in New York. Here's a book that he wrote that's kind of interesting, Millennialization of Everything, How to Win When Millennials Rule the World. That's a hell of a title, man. That is one hell of a title. So talk a little bit about innovation, sports, business, and your kind of perceptions here.
Sure. Well, I think actually this Super Bowl is the embodiment of the first high-tech 5G Super Bowl in the history of sports. If you think about, you mentioned the Fitbit, Dr. Kaplan, and Rick might even show you the wearable tech that was on his seat last night at the game.
You took it. I can't show you.
We returned it, just for the record.
Yeah, okay.
You think about wearable technology, right? We were the first bank in the world to deploy wearable technology in a bank branch. We made history at the time. People thought we were crazy. How could a bank deploy wearable technology in a bank branch? And of course, 2 years later, the Super Bowl is legitimizing wearable technology with crowd engagement and fan engagement at the biggest sporting event on the planet. And I think that validates the intersection between every industry, whether that's sports, whether that's media, whether that's technology, whether that's banking, financial services. We're in an arms race together through innovation and technology because our customers are all the same. Doesn't matter which industry you're engaged with, we all intersect together. And so we have a responsibility to deliver a superior customer experience and bring these technologies together. And the Super Bowl proved that and validated that thesis last night. So thank you.
Well, and the bottom line of all of this is, as we look at the 50-year trends in the sports business, you're not in silos anymore. You're in vertical integration, and innovation is part of vertical integration. Blake James, I heard a story that you were lured from the University of Maine because of the weather here, in addition to some significant opportunities to take a Division I football program and other sports back to the promised land, which you are on the way to doing. Blake, on the way to doing, with the help of some key sponsors and friends. So you took over the program and have been the director of athletics since 2013. We've had a lot of different challenges in the world of college athletics. Just keeping up with the Division I programs, notwithstanding pay-for-play and licensing and likeness and everything else. What's the greatest challenge you're facing now as we're moving forward?
Oh, wow. Greatest challenge. First, welcome to the Carol Sofer Indoor Facility. It's great to have you all on our campus here in Coral Gables and at the University of Miami. I think to answer the question, the greatest challenge is continuing to evolve what it means to be a student athlete. And again, I think if you look back, what it meant to be a student athlete 5 years ago is significantly different than what it is even today. And I think it's significantly different than what it'll mean in a few years. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in name, image, and likeness right now, and whether it's states creating laws and potentially the federal government, I think we'll see something happen there. But the thing I would tell everyone in the room is what it's meant to be a student athlete has continued to evolve. And as an association, I think we probably haven't done a very good job of educating and getting facts out there about what it means from the food, all the food that the kids get, to the spending money that they get, all those different types of things. I mean, I'll share with this group, if we have a Pell Grant individual, which is someone who comes from a lower income family, on full scholarship, they're taking home tax-free about $3,000 a month. And so, again, not to say they're going to be rich and be investing in any HSBC high-end investments, but it is something that, I think gets lost. And that's what we have to continue to do. So the biggest challenge is how do we continue to evolve what's really a great organization. When you watch the Olympics in Tokyo next summer, you're going to have a ton of kids who competed as NCAA athletes, not only for the U.S., but for countries around the world, because we have a great system. So the system isn't perfect. It's evolved. We probably haven't done a good job of communicating that. It needs to continue to evolve, and I'm confident it will, and we'll continue to have college athletics in the future. It'll just look different than it does today. But the thing I would say is it's different today than it was in 2010 or 2000 or 1990 or whatever year it was that you were in college.
I am going to violate the embargo on more than one question just for this. How about Ed Reed? You like that?
Yes, very much so. We're blessed with a number of great players, and you'll see them celebrated here on the top of the facility. And Ed was recognized by David's group as one of the 100 greats of all time. And it's something we talk about. We talked about core values earlier, and at the University of Miami we talk about excellence, integrity, respect, passion, and family being one. And I remember last night as they're announcing the 100 greats, and you see Ed Reed throwing up the U as they're announcing an NFL legend. And again, it just resonates back. I saw Edgerrin James, who was selected last night, and that's what Edgerrin was talking to me last night about, how Ed's coming back and what can he do to help. And so there's a unique bond that we have with our student athletes. It started before I was here, so I won't take credit, but as someone who's carrying the baton right now, it's something that I really focus on making sure we keep a priority, is that once you put the U on, it never comes off. We have a great group of young people that go out and represent us every day, and Ed's one that we're blessed and just has a tremendous passion for his university, for young people, and for the love of the game of football.
I will say this, growing up in South Florida, in the leather helmet days of the 50s and 60s, 1970 and beyond, Dolphins ran my life. I went to Northwestern and Harvard Law, but 1980s when I came back, I know it's Harvard, I'm sorry, it's Yale. All right, we'll get back to you. By the way, you were fourth on the list, or now ninth on the list, and that's okay. The 1980s, University of Miami ran my life, and I can't wait for you to bring him back.
There we go.
Wait for you to bring him back.
Thank you.
I was ready to introduce Diahann Billings-Buford as the quintessential leader in sports. After the eye roll after Harvard, I'll just read the damn.
It was a look of pity.
Yeah.
I wasn't scorn.
Wow.
I wasn't
that?
scorn. I was like,
How about that, ladies and gentlemen?
let's see.
How about that? Diahann Billings-Buford spent her career working with the less fortunate from other Ivy League schools. What does that mean?
I'm here helping you out
I know.
tonight.
That's
Yale is quick.
it. I don't need your help, okay?
quick,
I don't need that. Just be quiet.
We're
I
on
don't need
both
your help.
sides of you.
Yeah. Oh, you're Yale too?
No, I'm
This is
Johns
over.
Hopkins, but
All right. Well, no, we stop. All right, please. So, innovative startups. The most important thing I think for today is that Diahann is co-chair and CEO of the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality, RISE. He won a major humanitarian award at an event on Saturday. Steve Ross, as we know from panel one, is philanthropic first and basically everything else second. And so it's great to have you here, but it's also great to have you here representing one of the contributors and a good friend, Steve Ross. So talk a little bit about the organization.
Yeah, I'm happy to. One, thanks for having me. I have to tell you, weather is not that great in New York or Detroit, so it's a great time to be in Miami. But we actually have been running quite a bit of programming in the greater Miami area. And so RISE, we have a pretty clear mission. We just believe that we can educate and empower the sports community to combat racism and to promote social justice. We believe that sports are the great unifier. And our vision is that through sports, we're going to have a more unified nation. You know, I took this post a year and a half ago, and I was a little concerned. I was like, why is this really wealthy white man doing this? And if you have a chance on our website, risetowin.org, you know, I've kept this video up of Steve, and he talks about born and raised in Detroit, white flight happens. They maybe didn't have enough money to do the flight thing at first. So he stays in Detroit, and then at about 13, someplace between 13 and 15, he moves down to Florida. And as a teenager, he went from having an African American be like head of the student government to seeing segregation for the first time. And so I really, that resonated with me because here was a person who was willing to be open enough to say, hey, I think, he and I both think America is great, but he also thinks one of the things that holds us back is race and our inability or the difficulty we have in dealing with it. And so how do we do that effectively to unify people rather than to separate them? So I get to lead RISE and do that. And I just want to say, Blake, your comments are so true. We ran programming. We engage youth, college athletes, and professional athletes. And we were lucky enough to do some programming here with you guys. And you couldn't be more right. The role of the college, the student athlete, is evolving constantly. And one of the things that's happening in the professional space, but it is also happening to our college students, is that the college athlete is expected to be the spokesperson on really complicated issues in our society. And the truth is, as a mother of teenagers, I got a son in college, and I'm not sure he should be trying to figure out complex problems for anybody. And I have a daughter on her way, and they're wonderful. But the student athlete really is put in this position. And so one of the populations that RISE seeks to educate is that student athlete, because we're continuing to put them in that space of, what do you think? Help us figure it out. And then all of a sudden, they're a voice of authority on something that they may not have been trained in. And so we do a lot of education and a lot of empowerment, like I said, at the high school, the collegiate, and the professional level.
Well, and you also do a lot more, too. So good friend, contributor to the book, Dan Towers.
Yes.
Group 1001, philanthropic, happens to sponsor a show we do together called Power Sports, which is on Fox 100 times a month on all the regionals. But Dan says at the intersection of business and sport, countless inspiring and yet untold stories that should be shared. And to encourage more businesses and individuals to step up, it's essential to showcase these stories, displaying the power of our numbers to inspire positive change. We'll also continue to look for ways to encourage young people, women, and athletes of all abilities to get in the game and pursue their goals. It's not just facilities, it's empowerment, it's training, it's so much more. So talk about it.
Absolutely. So one, Dan Towers is probably one of the smarter people I know. I also get to work almost daily with the person I say is the smartest person in the room. No offense to Steve Ross, but Paul Tagliabue, whoa. So, and with both of them, I think they get it. One, I've been hearing this interesting statistic, and I hope I get it right, but someplace in the 80 or 90% of women that are in the C-suite positions have also at some point been engaged in sport, right? So when we talk about the power of sport, the only other alignment they see as clear is engagement in the Girl Scouts, right? And so when we talk about what sport can do from an inclusion standpoint, a leadership standpoint, preparation standpoint, and again, RISE believes in that ability to unify on really difficult issues. We think that sport is not the only place that it can happen, but great things can happen. And, you know, Dan has invested, he so believes in it, because everybody can have an idea. But the truth is, like any business, it takes an investment. We're a social impact. Our return on our investment will be social, and it will not be monetary, but it's the same concept, and Dan gets that. And so he has invested heavily at a number of organizations, whether it's the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, whether it is helping to build fields, build programs, and hopefully in the future we are planning to bring him on board with RISE to help us just really get at some of the most difficult things in our country, but with this understanding that through sport we can do it.
And philanthropy happens in different ways for different people, and it's not surprising that philanthropic giving in corporate America has increased 12% year over year. It's the highest increase in any category, which is kind of cool. Let's talk baseball for a minute. Tommy Hutton spent over 50 years in professional baseball, old guy, 17 as a player, 11 in the major leagues with the Dodgers, Phillies, Blue Jays, 38 years in broadcasting Major League Baseball games with Montreal, Toronto, New York Yankees. He and Abner Doubleday invented the game to get, no, he didn't invent that. Pretty close. Probably kind of Hall of Fame. I'm going to stop.
Pretty close.
Give me plus 22 career home runs, which we'll get into in a minute.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, voice of the Marlins, been a longtime friend. You've been around for many of these years, the growth, the World Series championships. What have the Marlins meant to South Florida generally, if you can put kind of a perspective on it?
Well, first of all, I'm overwhelmed and excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me, because I'm listening to doctors and bankers, such, and yourself. I want to start out, though, because a couple of things have really piqued my interest in listening to everybody tonight. The coaching aspect and the importance of someone who was a mentor or coach. I signed back in 1964 with the Los Angeles Dodgers, my hometown team. I grew up in L.A. How great is this? I grew up in L.A. and I've lived in South Florida for 35 years. But Tommy Lasorda was the scout that signed me. And I would later play for him 3 years in the minor leagues. And I love my dad and my mom, but I was around Tommy Lasorda much more than my dad. and he had a tremendous influence on me, not only as a player, but as a person. And then the innovative part of sport and all sports in training and getting yourself ready to play. I can remember playing in the California League, 1965. Our trainer, who certainly wasn't certified, was also our bus driver and our team travel coordinator. So he served three purposes. So things have come a long way. I see Major League clubhouses now, and each team has, I think, 3 trainers. Their strength and conditioning coaches. There's all kinds of facilities they have at their hand. I don't know why they get hurt so much compared to years ago. Anyway, but to talk about the Marlins in the community, I go back to my first year broadcasting Marlins baseball was 1997. And how fortunate was I? That was the first year they won the World Series, their first World Series. And the part that troubles me is that I look back at that year, which was a great team, 2 guys on that team that were from UM, Alex Fernandez and Charles Johnson. So when I saw the U, I thought of those 2 guys and the importance they had on that ball club. During that season, that whole season, they drew 2.6 million people. They averaged 29,000 per game in winning the World Series. Now, I will say a lot of that was backloaded when it looked like they were going to go to postseason. The disturbing part was in 2003 when the Marlins also won a World Series, and we're real fortunate in this area. I can think of teams, the San Diego Padres have never won a World Series. They've been in it, they've never won it. So you're fortunate to have a team that has won 2 World Series championships. But in 2003, the Marlins drew 1.3 million people that year. And even in September, when they knew they were going to go to postseason, the attendance wasn't that great. So personally, I would like to see baseball. I know we've talked a lot about football, and I love football. I love all the sports. I love watching the Heat. I love watching the Dolphins. But I think I'd love to see more people just get involved with the baseball team as opposed to just wanting them to win. And the Marlins do a lot for the community. I'm involved with a few things they do. I know every year they do a big school initiative where they visit all the schools for the week. Different players go to all the schools. So with Bruce Sherman and Derek Jeter, the ownership now, trust me, Derek Jeter is in this to build a franchise for the long haul, not to put together pieces here and there. And the type of player that he was, and just in the times that I've spoken with him, he's not in this for the short term. He could do a lot of things. He doesn't have to be part of a baseball team. He could do a lot of things and make a lot of money. He's trying to do this right, and so I'm happy to be a part of it, and still a little part of it now, doing some pre- and post-game shows.
He's more of a little part of it. He's the, we talked about him as being the voice of the Marlins, and there's nobody that's more recognizable. As to golf, so our final panelist has been the Chief Strategy Officer and is Steranka Sports and Strategy. It's a pretty creative name since that's your name of your family.
Took a page out of your book.
Yeah, I understand. Got it. I understand. But he was the former CEO of PGA of America, which is really important as well. In his 25-year career with PGA of America, 7 as CEO. He served with the World Golf Foundation, the World PGA Alliance. In his 40th year of professional sports, Joe is really one of the key movers and shakers for amateur golf, teaching golf, kids golf, women's golf, empowerment, philanthropy, but also has a pretty interesting history and perspective of South Florida golf, what it's meant, where it's been. So unload that perspective on this audience.
Sure. Well, I'm going to start right now because I'm the only person between the buffet and another cocktail. So you may have perceptions about golf being a slow, tedious sport. We're going to make this quick instead. So how many people here play golf? And how many people have gone to Topgolf? So you see that, just as we talked about one constant for all of us, whether it's HSBC and having people wear wearable devices, we're all adapting and changing and incorporating technology into our sports offering. So one thing I'll share with you is the relevance that golf has in everybody up here on stage and everyone out there in the audience. You think about a sport that has an iconic figure named Tiger. You know, there aren't too many name superstars that span the globe the way he does. Down to that golf professional who works at the links at Key Biscayne and tries to juniors and seniors and women and brand new players excited about golf. And in doing so, provide a great living for themselves and a great economic impact for the community. Now, you think about golf, when we're playing golf, and a lot has been talked about health and wellness, and I'm thrilled to have a guy who's going to, make my next knee surgery or shoulder surgery easier and quicker. But it's one of the most healthy activities, and you can start at age 8 and play to age 80. Riding in a golf cart and playing around the golf, you're going to burn 500 calories, over 1,400 if you actually walk 18 holes and pull your little trolley around, or are fortunate to have a caddy. So the health and wellness benefits, and you think about young people today who are obsessed with these digital devices that they're growing up with. So to get them out into a program like PGA Junior League or the LPGA Girls Golf Club is an important step. We also talked about economic impact. Right here in Florida alone, golf is an $8 billion a year industry. One of every 80 Floridians has a job connected to the golf industry. $3.5 billion of wages. And what drives it? Yeah, it is the Players Championship, or I'm on the board of the Honda Classic, and Rick has helped the Honda Classic out quite a bit. And we've raised $50 million for charity, children's health care in Palm Beach County. But that $8 billion is really driven by, I was talking to one of the bankers here who serves that small business community, up to $5 million entrepreneur trying to get things started. That's the classic golf course in Florida. There are 1,100 of these small businesses, that make up the bulk of the 132,000 jobs here in our state. And nationally, it's 2 million jobs are connected with golf, and it's an $84 billion a year industry. So, playing a game that you start out as a kid and end up as a swinging senior, as we call them, and enjoy every moment along the way. And at the same time, golf is a platform that really is unlike anything else in terms of building a community of people that like to leave it better than when they found it. And so for this terrific person, well, I know your name, but you are one terrific human being, Diahann, to do what you're doing to change attitudes among all of us about race in this country and make that conversation, a lot easier to have and comfortable to have. But that's what golf does. Golf raises $4.4 billion a year for charitable causes around the country. Yeah, we got upscale demographics that can afford that. It's the reason that HSBC is one of the big global sponsors of golf and sponsors, golf sports conferences around the world. But let's bring it home, because that's what it's all about. It's making our local community, the people that work there, providing those services, and I'm always going to be, look at the PGA professional in a special way, because these are the men and women that they They're there at 6 in the morning, and they're there till 8 o'clock at night, and they're all trying to do one thing, help us enjoy the game a little bit more and get that ball up in the air a little bit further.
I'm going to do one more thing, and then we're going to be done. We're not going to reveal the top 10 moments because we're going to do that in the media eventually. I'm going to ask you all for 30 seconds of indulgence for each of you. Jack Nicklaus is one of the key contributors to this book, and he knew about this event and wanted me to express that he's a supporter of all of this. And he made a comment in the book that's kind of interesting. He said, in the business of sport, you have to understand that your brand, and more specifically public perception of your brand, trumps every other decision you make in your marketing mix. New York Yankees, Dallas Cowboys, Augusta National, Pebble Beach, Nike, Under Armour, all of these brands are successful because of the way they're perceived. Interesting comment from a guy who we just think is a golfer. So 30 seconds apiece, no more. Give me your perception of your own brand, whether it's a South Florida brand or your brand, where it is and where it's going. Blake?
It's the U. I mean, hey, come on, what else do you say? I couldn't agree more, and it's something that we talk about on a regular basis, but we're blessed in that the brand has really skyrocketed, and I'll say we've been able to keep it there. There isn't a spot. We hire new coaches all the time, and they say they can walk anywhere in the country, and you walk in with the U on, and you get that recognition right away. So we're blessed with the brand.
Conroy?
You know, for us as a medical startup and innovator, we're a tool company, and we give really talented surgeons tools to help affect change in patients. And so our brand is really dependent on the change that we create in putting athletes back on the field or helping surgeons help patients recover. So we're just starting that point as a company that's about to have its first FDA-cleared product, but it's really about supporting the artists who take care of the athletes.
Joe?
My brand is golf, so it's technology that's going to drive a more entertaining experience. It is focused on sustainability. How do we better prepare the nation's golf courses and use less water? And it's diversity. You know, the browning of America is here. You know, we're going to us Caucasians are going to be not be the majority race here in the next 30 years, and golf has to reflect that, and look like the face of America. So a lot of big initiatives that they don't get solved in a quarter or a year. They're hopefully a generation, but you got to plant those seeds now to make that change happen.
Yaley?
Complicated. I think my brand Rise's brand is having really diverse people together having very difficult conversations. I think if you think about the NFL and what it's going through, and to have someone who owns an NFL franchise on the forefront of conversations about race and equity, I would say our brand is complicated, but I think we're tenacious and we're focused and we're going to make it happen.
Doc?
Yeah, I think we're kind of a combination of many of the things that have been said. I think Blake does say something when we show up for the health system with the U. It means something. I think you brought up something unique in the 80s. You know, I think the reason the University of Miami was so important at that time and will become so important again, even with great franchises, at that time it was the Dolphins and the U, right? And yet everybody knew a classmate that went to play football here or basketball, you know, somebody they worked with, your teacher's son. And so it was really the community, which is why I think Tommy's point's so great, that's why they showed up. I think for me and for our brand in medicine, and when we talk about healthcare innovation, there's something very important that I've looked to the banking industry on and tech, which is we look at everything algorithmically as in the past. But as what's been said, we better be looking out at what are the changes that can happen. You read about things like Netflix and how the Blockbuster guys laughed at them, you know. If one element of the industry changes, it changes everything. So I'm looking at what are the new technologies so I can make my patients better. what message can I have when every 16-year-old walks in, I joke, how are your grades, and how we could do that. So we've tried to use that platform to make sure that we're looking where change goes. I'm not a great quote guy, but Gretzky said the reason he scored goals is not because he knew where the puck was, it's where it's going. So I think in healthcare and in what we can do in our community and what we're doing at the University of Miami, even in football and everything else what Blake's doing, we really need to see where things are going and be aware of them and not be so caught up in the past in our algorithms.
So, Jeremy, your comment about branding, and let me just promote, your other book, I kind of tried to pronounce millennialization, I did, but the other one is Investing with Impact, Why Finance is a Force for Good. So it gives you kind of the window in what you're all about. So talk about your brand and the perception of branding.
Well, I think, and thanks Rick, and thanks everyone for the opportunity to be on this panel. I think sports is the ultimate common language all over the world. And it's the leading international bank. We're in an automating world, in a digitizing industry. And we're an innovative at the forefront of so many different parts of our industry, and we have been for 150 years. And if I can use the golf analogy, we've made the cut. We're in the final group on Sunday. That's where HSBC is. So, it's the place to be.
Tommy, hard for me to believe that I bestowed this on you, but you really have the last word.
Thank you, Rick. The brand that I'd like to just throw out there is that 3 years ago, the Marlins organization had in MajorLeagueBaseball.com in their prospects list, the Marlins had none, had 0 out of 100 of the prospects that MLB.com picked. This year, they have 5. So it takes time. They've added some veteran people to their lineup. And I think the brand I would like to see is for people to be proud that they have a Major League Baseball team in their backyard. And they can go to a Major League game 80 times a year.
So in conclusion, here's my brand comment. My brand comment is lucky to be in the right place at the right time. That's too many words, but this is a labor of love for me. We wrote this book and issued it at Harvard Law and Harvard Business on February of last year. We started it at Yale, but they didn't quite understand it, so we took it to Harvard.
You would have had better sales.
Yeah. Now with Yale people. So anyway, in all seriousness, this is 50 years of the sports business from people that have made a difference. And I've really done this as a labor of love, but what's made it sing is Morrison, Jeremy, and Rogan, and everybody else at HSBC who is giving this life. To start this in South Florida, move it to LA, go everywhere else, and I'd really, really like to thank HSBC for giving this wings, and thank you all for being here.